My name is Fred Bauma, and I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I know many of you probably have never heard of this country, but it's located somewhere in Central Africa, and it's actually a big country. It is as big as the Western Europe, and it's home to 80 million of vibrant, very diverse, and a very resilient people. Congo has one of the biggest and most powerful river in the world. It's called the Congo River, which is actually the second, I think, after the Amazon. And it has a huge biodiversity, beautiful landscape, and many reasons to be loved. It's a very beautiful country, actually. It also has a huge and immense hydroelectric potential. It could electrify all the Africa, for example. It also has an agricultural potential that could feed all its population. It also has a lot of mineral resources, including the coltan. Maybe you don't know it, but every one of you holds a little bit of Congo in his pocket, in his smartphone, since coltan is one of the key components of it. And it also have cobalt, which is a lot of cobalt, actually more than 50% of cobalt reserve in the world, which is more of a key component of rechargeable batteries, which is important for electric cars. And yet, Congo is one of the poorest countries in the world. In 2015, Congo was one of the 10 poorest countries according to World Bank. It is ruined by corruption, misgovernment, and violent conflict. So if you've probably heard of Congo in the last 20 years, it's probably because of its armed conflict, which caused a lot of death. Actually, the most deadly conflict since the Second World War. Also probably heard of Congo because of the million of displaced people inside that country. Or because of young kids who are starving to death in this country, which could feed half of the continent. So in 2012, we decided to organize ourselves for a change because we couldn't support anymore living in the country that's rich and being so poor. So we created a movement. We call it LUCHA. And we start organizing ourselves from a city to another. We mobilized people. And since 4 years especially, we decided to mobilize against our president, who is this handsome guy of 47 years old. And we mobilized against him because he was trying to change the constitution in order to remain in power. So we decided that we were going to get rid of him. And this year, in January, we have our symbolic, although imperfect, victory. After elections and the huge repression, he decided to leave the power. And he lost the election in favor of, his candidate lost the election in favor of an opponent. So that was a victory for us. So from this 4 years of nonviolence mobilization against the President Kabila, I have 5 lessons that I would like to share with you. And here is the first one. Usually what revolts you is a drop in the ocean, and I couldn't frame it better, I don't know, I would like. But what I mean is, usually when you are revolted by something, or when you decide to become an activist, it's because there is a situation that you can't live with anymore. It can be the lack of water or electricity. That's what was at the origin of our movement. It can be the corruption. It can be the bad education system. It can be whatever it is. But once you start, you realize very quickly that there are many problems. So we will try. For us, we tried to address the water question, and we realized that it was linked to misgovernment, to linked to corruption, and you realize that the problem is bigger than what you were expecting. And that leads you to the second lesson that I learned. So in that situation, the easiest way is to define who is the evil and try to fight him. So usually in our countries, the head of the state is the person who is responsible for everything, and we have to defeat him. And we made this mistake in our country for years ago. So from Mobutu, the guy on my left, who spent 32, who was a known dictator who spent 32 years in power, and people thought he was the problem. They fought him. They defeated him to replace him by Kabila, the father, who was also finally killed, and they replaced him by his son, who did the same thing. So what I realized is the problem is not the individuals. The problem is the system. And the system is more complicated to defeat because the system survived to the individual that appear to be the symbol of that system. So my second lesson was, don't confuse your target. Defeating individuals doesn't mean defeating systems. And to defeat system, you have to strategize. And in strategizing, there is a third lesson, is you are not alone. So usually, when you realize that you are powerless, the problem is bigger. You are just students probably. You are just young kid coming from university without any means. And you're like, I won't do anything. I can't change anything. Maybe you feel like I have to give up. But what I learned is you need to understand that there are many people who think like you, who are also tired of the situation, who are not probably, for one reason or another, courageous enough to make the first step. But you can find them, and together, if you come together, you can be stronger. You can organize better. You need to build the coalitions. This is what we did. We put together the church communities, the opposition leaders, the transportation union, and so on, in order to mobilize people in the streets. Because when when it's becoming a problem of many communities, it is more likely to win. But then there is a fourth lesson, is the change has a price. So at the beginning, we were just young kids from the university. And when we start mobilizing, people were like, this guy, let them go in the street. Sometimes they will beat us, but we weren't a threat to anybody. And everybody was like, well, they will go there, they'll get tired, they will go back to their home. And the next day, we were in the street again. So when we become consistent, we become a threat to them, a threat to the system. And the system reacted. And it reacts sometimes very violently in a repression. So many of us during these 4 past years, we live in a very violent repression where people were arrested, where some people were kidnapped for weeks. And I live it personally. I spent 18 months in jail because of this, because of my activism, because we became a threat to the regime. But that wasn't the highest level. So in this picture, you see this is Luc. Luc is one of my best friends. And one sad day of June, Luc was killed in his house. He was one of the leaders of the movement. And his house was just burned. And he got killed inside. And it was a sad day. I started questioning myself, was it the right way to do things? Why am I mobilizing people if I will end up losing my family, my friend, being repressed, seeing my friend be chased from university because they are activists, and so on? And it's very discouraging as a reality. But then I remember that change has a cost. And each generation, every generation has to pay for the cost of its freedom. Because if you don't pay for that cost, if you are not ready to pay for it, then the next generation will pay even a higher price. So we have a responsibility for us and for the future to pay for the price of that freedom, to pay to gain it, and to pay to maintain it. And that is this is my last lesson that I learned, is that the power belongs to the people. And the power belongs to the people means, for me, it's not just a slogan, it's not just a motto, it's the realization that I have a power as a single citizen, and we have a power all together. And we are the master of our own future. And unless we can use that power to change things, we are not going to see any change. And this power, it is not something, the organizing, the community organizing is not something that you do once a time. It's a permanent thing. When you think you gain the liberty or the freedom, you have to fight again to maintain it. And keep in mind that the power belongs to you, and you are the only master of your soul. Thank you.